Hey friends, quick real world, I call like a real world review, because I'm going to talk about a few things here that I haven't seen anybody talk about in some of the other reviews that might be important to you. I put up a video after I had this thing for about a day and then started making a bunch of updates in the comments section. And then I was like, no, I'm just going to redo this video because it's probably easier. People hopefully be able to understand it better. Let me just say first off, we were a customer, an Amplifi HD customer. We had that set up for a couple years. Super happy with it. The app that you use on your phone or iPad or whatever is exactly the same app, so that's nice. It's easy to kind of move and translate from that. Nothing new to learn there. The system is dead easy to set up out of the box. If you just are getting the base unit, super easy to set up out of the box. Mine, I bought the one that has the extender. That was a little bit dicey. Eventually got it to work. I'm not even really entirely sure exactly what the problem was, just the app. These things come out of the box pre-connected to each other. There's nothing that you have to do. There's no button that you got to push on this guy or put it into some kind of pairing mode or do something in the app. It's just supposed to work. For whatever reason, for me in the app, it just kept saying that this guy was offline. Finally just, it finally just worked itself out. It actually needed 2 updates, which I wasn't surprised that it was going to need 1, but it needed 2 updates as soon as I took it out of the box. As soon as this thing got an internet connection, it immediately on the front of the screen said it needed an update, and then it needed another update after that too. Once that happened, everything kind of started working itself out. But overall, super happy with the upgrade. We're an AT&T customer. We have this thing called Gigapower. It's a 1 gig up and down internet connection. With the previous Wi-Fi, we just weren't taking advantage of the bandwidth that we had. Only a wired client basically could even get close to taking advantage of the bandwidth that we had available to us. And now we got 3 kids home, schooling from home, plus they're gaming and everything in the evening time. My wife and I both are working from home too, and I'm on conference calls using Teams and stuff all day. So, and my stuff down here is wired in, so I've never really had a problem. But just for other devices around the house, we just thought, hey, let's just, future-proof ourselves here and get this thing. The other thing that's really important to know too is that the base unit of this thing, and I don't have a scientific test or anything for it, but it is way out covers the previous version, no question. With the previous, just with the base unit, I could barely get like a iPad or anything wireless down here. We have a 3-story house, and good candidates for a mesh system. It's a 5,000 square foot 3-story house. I'm in like a walkout basement here. So with the previous, I could barely even get this thing connected, and it was really slow. Now with this guy, the iPad connects to the base unit 200 to 300 megabyte download speeds, right? So pretty significant just in terms of the coverage for just the base unit. We probably could get away in this house, believe it or not, just having the base unit. Everybody would be able to connect. The extender I put upstairs near the kids, all their computers and stuff are up there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But overall, super happy with the upgrade. It's not a cheap upgrade. It's about 700, I think it's 750 bucks to get it to my door. So it's not a super cheap upgrade. A couple things that I wanted to call out though. I won't get too technical about it or anything, but just so that you know kind of what's going on here. One of the features that's really important to me with having this is that I've got 3 kids, and I love the feature in the app that allowed you to group for each of my kids. I could group all their devices together, and then I could turn them off in the app. I could create a schedule during the nighttime, during the day. If they were, making my wife mad, she could go into the app and just turn them off, whatever, right? So keep that in mind here. So the reason these things are really dead simple to hook up is because, you've got, you got your internet connection comes into your house, and you have this equipment. It's a router from AT&T, Spectrum, Comcast, whoever your provider is. I'll just call it a router. Those, most of the time, in almost every scenario that I've ever seen, those have a switch in the back of it. You can plug hardwire stuff into it, or daisy chain a switch off of it to plug more stuff in. And they also do wireless. And the reason most people buy one of these is because the wireless isn't sufficient to cover their whole house, which is how we got started with this whole thing, right? The reason these are so simple to get running is that you just take this guy right here, has 4-port switch on the back. It comes with an Ethernet cable in the box. You plug one of those ports into one of the ports in the back of your internet router, and then you just start connecting clients to it and everything works. What you don't see, what you may not ever have noticed, is that if you look at the IP address, and so your internet, that router from AT&T Comcast, it's doing this thing called DHCP. That's how you get an IP address. All these devices that connect need an IP address. Well, that device is giving an IP address, and then this device gives an IP address. And while they allow both of those devices to get access to the internet, might not allow both of those devices to actually communicate with each other, right? And that can be a big deal. It's a big deal for me with a couple different scenarios, with like Chromecast is a perfect example. If my TV upstairs is hardwired into my AT&T router and getting a 192.168.1.1 address, let's call it that, and my phone is connected to this guy and he's getting a 192.168.115.1 address, and then there's this NAT thing, this sort of double NAT thing that's happening in between these two devices, it doesn't work. They won't connect with each other. So there's a way around that. And here's the caveat. If you don't care about the parental features or the features that allow you to group your devices together and set schedules, then you can turn on this thing called bridge mode. And bridge mode basically just turns the switch on the back of this guy into, like, you just went to Amazon or Best Buy and you just bought one of these little 4-port Netgear or, Cisco switches or something. It's bridged. Every device that will connect to your network will get a DHCP address from your existing equipment, from your AT&T, Comcast, whatever that router is. The downside to that is that all the parental features quit working. And so, again, that was kind of the impetus for me to change this whole video around, was because I haven't seen anybody talk about that. And I haven't seen it in documentation. I didn't see any of that stuff before. And so if you desire those features, and now, to be fair, you can work around that, right? But you'll have to make a conscious decision of where you start plugging stuff in, right? The things that need to communicate with each other, you have to plug everything in. If you want wireless to connect to a wired, you're going to have to, connect a switch to this thing and start connecting stuff that's wired over here, because if you wire it over here, even if it's plugged directly in, if it's wired in, plugged directly in, it's going to get an IP address that'll match the IP addresses that your wireless clients get. The downside, again, to this whole thing is that when you're in bridge mode, this thing is way faster. The clients that connect over Wi-Fi when it's in bridge mode are way faster. So one of the things that I was a little frustrated about when I first got this thing turned on and was connecting to the internet was that these Wi-Fi 6, I put Wi-Fi 6 cards in all the desktops in the house that connect over wireless. And I was only getting about, 300, maybe close to 400, download speeds. And I was like, I'm watching these videos on YouTube and these guys are getting, 6, 7, 800 meg download speeds to these devices that are Wi-Fi 6 enabled, and I wasn't. Well, when I switched this thing over into bridge mode and then went back and ran tests on those devices, I was getting that. I was getting close to, up into the 6 range on a device that I was maybe getting 400 before. So it does make a difference. And if you think about it, there's processing that has to happen here. There's, it's electrons moving around, and there's some latency, to do all the processing and stuff to do this double NAT thing. So it's that part's, it's kind of a bummer for sure. So what I'm gonna have to do is switch this thing back for bridge mode, and then I'm just gonna have to start figuring out where to plug stuff in on my network. And the other thing here, and I'll talk about it in the app. I'll switch the camera around here and talk about it on the app. But the other thing that's important is this thing called, they call it Ethernet backbone or Ethernet backhaul if you look at it up online. But it allows this guy to be hardwired to this guy, right? Instead of it connecting. So this is your extender and you put it somewhere else in your house. It can connect to this guy over wireless but ideally you want this thing to connect. It's got an Ethernet jack on the back of it, and you want, and this would depend on obviously if your house was wired up for Ethernet, but you'd want to plug that into the back of this, because now all of your clients that are connecting to this mesh extender, they're going to have a faster path back to the internet, obviously if it's wired in, versus these two being connected over Wi-Fi. This is what it looks like when you get this little guy right here, when you actually have this Ethernet backbone turned on. And the way you do that is you click on your extender and you just click this checkbox here. That's pretty much it. And now what that means is, what you're telling it is that these two are physically connected to each other. That's not over a wireless connection. They're physically connected to each other. Right now I've got this thing in bridge mode, and one of the things that you'll see down here is that if I go into my devices section, and what's really weird too is that the iPad, the iOS and the Android app aren't the same. They kind of look the same, but there's some features and stuff in that don't look the same. In the Android app, up at the top here, it says, hey, you can click this right here and you can create some schedules. You can create some profiles so that you can group these devices together and everything. Even though it doesn't work in the iPad, it actually, if you click on that, it'll say, hey, you can't do that while this is in the bridge mode configuration. So when it's not in the bridge mode configuration, I can actually pick any of these, and I can click this pause button and it'll actually pause it. You can see it didn't do anything. And if I click it up here as well, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't give me the ability to do any of that anymore. On the Android app, it actually will tell you you can't do that while you're in bridge mode. And so if you go into bridge mode and you're only using iOS devices and you're clicking around and you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on, that's what's happening. That's what's going on. You can't have this thing in bridge mode and get access to any of these features. So super, super bummer for that. So in short, super happy with the upgrade. In terms of the performance, it's a bummer that we're not going to be able to get the best performance, because I'm not going to put this thing in bridge mode because it breaks one of the best features for me, or one of the features that I like the most, which is the ability to, put my kids' devices into groups and to set schedules and stuff around that, and putting this thing into bridge mode completely breaks that. And it also limits the speeds, right? I'm not able to get the fastest speeds that I could possibly get, because now this thing is doing the double NAT deal, and it's impacting the performance. That said, it's 10 times faster plus for pretty much every device. Not every device, but the devices that I use primarily, particularly anything that's Wi-Fi 6 enabled, it's a solid 10 times faster, and the coverage is better. So I don't have to have an extender down here in this basement anymore, where I had to, and then I had to connect the extender down here over 2.4 gigahertz, which was even slower. So anything that was actually connected to the wireless down here, where now I don't have an extender down here, and this iPad gets 200 meg download. With the previous setup, I had the extender down here and I would get maybe 30 meg download. So it's a pretty significant upgrade. But again, I wanted to point out a couple different things that might impact your buying decision, or if you actually have installed this thing and you're like, especially if you have the iOS app and it's not actually telling you what's broken or what's not working, you're probably like, what the hell's going on here? And so hopefully this was helpful to some folks. Again, I'm glad that we did it. I feel like this future-proofs us a little bit. Maybe they'll, word will get back to Amplifi, and they will, do some firmware settings or something like that. I don't know. But we can make it work. It's possible to make it work with that not being in bridge mode. I just have to start figuring out the things that I need to communicate with each other, and then they need to go on the appropriate network, and that part's kind of a bummer to have to figure that stuff of it out. But it is what it is. But I hope this was helpful and useful. If you have any questions, please ask away. I'm happy to help in any way. I try to keep tabs in the comments and stuff like that and answer. So if you have any questions, ask away. Thanks for watching.